people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
De la noche, Stephanie Piñeiro.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. What looks to be an interesting exchange between Yoshida Metcalf of America and Nina Hughes of the United Kingdom. A Twitter user that goes by the name Joel said, I don't care who fights who and in what order, but I want to see these fights between Yoshida and Nina Hughes and Yoshida Metcalf. They're all good fights. To which Yoshida herself responded, I told you, this bitch is scared. She's not trying to fight me. To which Nina Hughes herself responded, I'm definitely not scared of you. Respectfully, I've beaten someone that you got a draw with. I'm chasing unifications and undisputed. You bring nothing to the table. You're not even my mandatory. Have a good evening.
It is true that Yoshida's not Nina's mandatory, she's Mio's mandatory by way of the IBF.
Boxing is a funny old game, it really is, because earlier this year, Yoshida Metcalf outpointed Mio Yoshida the way that I said she would, only for Mio to end up getting a title shot, and only for Mio to end up becoming champion, a 2-division champion overall. She was WBO champion at Superfly, and now she's IBF champion at Bantam.
What happens now?
It depends on the IBF, really. It depends on how long it takes the IBF to order a fight between Yoshida and Mio Yoshida, what would be a rematch. It depends, because if they don't order that fight in a timely fashion, that leaves the door open for Mio Yoshida to either run it back with Ebony Bridges or do a unification match with Nina Hughes, WBA champion. Nina's interest, her stake in all of this is fighting for the blue belt, is fighting for the IBF title. When Ebony had it, she wanted to fight Ebony. Now that Mio has it, she wants to fight Mio. But it's the belt that she's after. It's the IBF title. That's not hard to understand.
So what's the IBF gonna do?
Are they gonna order the fight between Yoshida Metcalf and Mio Yoshida, or will Yoshida have to fight one more eliminator, one more final eliminator against somebody in the IBF's ranked standings? She's currently ranked at number 1. Ranked at number 2 is Argentina's own Florencia Juarez, fighter that sports a professional record of 12 wins with 1 loss, no draws, 1 recorded knockout, having never been knocked out in 13 professional bouts. Is the IBF going to order a fight between the number 1 and number 2 ranked fighters in their ranked standings, or will they order the fight straight away? The fight between Yoshida and Mio, what would be the rematch.
Mio lost the first fight,
but it turned out to be a blessing in disguise, because Mio, in spite of losing that fight, was more active this calendar year than Ebony Bridges. She was sharper on the night, took the fight on short notice. What we saw from Ebony Bridges, the then champion, was ring rust. At least from where I was sitting, that's what it looked like. She looked slow. She looked flat. Her punches didn't have any snap on him. She wasn't judging the distance properly and was getting caught coming in. Her timing was off, whereas Mio...
In spite of Mio coming right off a points decision loss to Yoshida, Mio was comparatively sharper, more accurate. She was switched on. She was ready.
Ebony needs to fight Mio again. She needs to try to win that belt back. And unless the IBF is on the verge of ordering Mio to satisfy her mandatory challenger, the door is open for her to have a second fight with Ebony.
What about Nina?
Nina wants to unify, and I can't say I blame her. In a situation where the IBF isn't about to order Mio to satisfy her mandatory, I suppose that would mean that Mio has a choice. That she would have a choice in fighting Ebony again, giving her a second fight, or unifying titles with Nina Hughes. In that situation, it's really up to Mio. Pick your poison. What do you want to do? A fight between Yoshida and Nina Hughes would be a fan-friendly fight. Nina Hughes, like Yoshida, she's a mid-range fighter, and she's a combination puncher, an aggressive one and a strong one. So it would be a very entertaining fight.
I think Nina Hughes wins it.
Nothing against Yoshida. It's not my intention to diminish her victory over Ebony, but I feel like the stars just aligned. She caught Ebony at the right time when she's been out of action a while due to hand surgery, and she's got ring rust to shake off. I still give Mio a lot of credit for taking the fight on short notice and coming in as the underdog. It's not a fight that Mio was favored to win. It's a fight that she was favored to lose. So she still deserves a lot of credit, but based on what I saw, she caught Ebony at the right time. When Ebony hasn't fought, she's got ring rust to shake off, and the fight was a more physical fight than Ebony anticipated. I don't think that'll be the case with Nina Hughes. I think Nina...
If her and Mio do end up fighting, I think Nina wins the fight.
Men's super middleweight and light heavyweight news. Artur Beterbiev says, David Benavidez possibly moving up. If he wants this fight, no problem. I don't think he wants that fight. And I don't think he wants to move up there so long as the belts are split between Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol. Beterbiev hasn't spent a single second of training camp even thinking about the possibility of facing Benavidez one day. However, when asked to give his thoughts on the current WBC interim titleist calling him out, Beterbiev made it clear that he isn't avoiding Benavidez and would welcome a showdown with him. If he wants this fight, no problem. Beterbiev told Jean Zedel of FightHype.com, no problem. Though David, for all his talk, he doesn't want that fight, and he doesn't want to move up to 175. If he did, he would have done so a long time ago. No, I feel that if the belt situation at light heavyweight were different, drastically different, if it weren't Artur and Dmitry holding those titles, if different fighters were champions there and those different fighters were on the same side of the street as David, then maybe he would have moved up a long time ago. You have to remember that David first became WBC champion at super middleweight 6 years ago in 2017.
That he's still squeezing down to 168 after all these years, that tells you everything you need to know.
Now, obviously, Canelo also has his role to play, trying to land a fight with him. Canelo Alvarez became a full champion at super middleweight in late 2020 in the Callum Smith fight that was for the WBA and Ring Magazine title.
It has its role to play, at least it does now, but that didn't happen till much later on. You have to remember that earlier in the year, that same year, David Benavidez blew the weight, lost his title on the scales, and he made the decision that he wants to keep campaigning there. He wants to stay at 168, even though his body was busting at the seams.
That's saying that even before Canelo became a champion at that weight and won a title there, and even before the focus shifted to trying to get a fight with Canelo, David still had no intention of moving up. He still had no intention of going up there to light heavyweight, even though there was a reason to do so. No, I don't think we see a Beterbiev versus Benavidez fight in this lifetime. Artur's got to take care of business against Callum Smith, his mandatory challenger, in his next fight. And if he makes it through that fight, he's going to unify titles with Dmitry Bivol. They're going to settle up with each other. David's going to keep boiling down to 168 for as long as he can, so he can keep having that size advantage and that power advantage over the guys at 168. That's the reason he's still there. You may be a big fish, a big guy, and a big puncher at 168, but at 175...
You're not the biggest and the baddest. You're not the biggest puncher in the room.
Word around the campfire is that Dmitry Bivol, the WBA's light heavyweight champion, he's already signed the paperwork to take on Artur Beterbiev should he beat Callum Smith. That's the latest when it comes to them. And David's not a part of that scene. He's not a part of that picture. For all his talk, he's going to sit pretty at 168 waiting for the phone to ring, hoping that Canelo will give him a call.
I don't know what he's going to do in the meantime while he waits. I don't know who he's going to fight.
But this fight, this potential matchup, has no potential. Benavidez versus Beterbiev will likely never see the light of day. If it had, David Benavidez would leave in a stretcher. He'd get sat on his ass. You might be able to use your size and combination punching against those guys at super middleweight, standing shoulder square right in front of them, letting punches go. But if you did that with Artur, he'd put you in the hospital.
He'd put you on your ass. Didn't Ronald Gavril put David on his ass?
You had to fight, very unheralded, Ronald the Thrill Gavril for what was the newly vacated WBC title that Badu Jack left behind when he moved up from 168 up to 175. And David needed 2 fights for one decisive victory against Ronald. Ronald is no Artur Beterbiev. Ronald is no Dmitry Bivol. And I understand that fight was many years ago, but it's not like a lot changed about David Benavidez. He still fights more or less the same way. He still does all the same things, mowing down his opponents with size, volume, and aggression. It's not like he became a more dynamic and nuanced fighter over time. He's still doing the same stuff, still relying on the same stuff.
If he would have moved up and he would have tried that stuff on Artur knocks him out.
What has been working for David Benavidez at super middleweight would not have worked against Artur up there at light heavyweight. Now, standing right in front of the guy, shoulder square with those long arms, trying to put shots together, he's going to catch you in between. And he's a bigger puncher than you are, by and large. Artur Beterbiev is the biggest puncher anywhere at or around these weights, 168, 175. He cracks you one good time, you go out, my friend.
You're done.
You don't have to wonder why, after all these years, David Benavidez is still killing himself to make 168. Between the money that he hopes to make boxing Canelo Alvarez and the perils of moving up to 175, where maybe you're not the biggest puncher in the room. No, you don't need to wonder why David is still squeezing down to 168. It's very obvious. Finally, former cruiserweight champion Badu Jack was asked about Joshua versus Wilder, saying, "I don't think it's dead, but it's not as hot as it was before."
I think it's dead.
They noticed that there is still a lingering desire in some circles, very small ones, for the contest to still go down. Jack admits he was one of the many who did not expect Parker to come away with the victory. Not really, but Parker is a former world champion. He's not an easy fight for no one, Parker told the IFL.
Jack told the IFL.
However, Jack is still interested in watching a long-awaited showdown between Joshua and Wilder. I still want to see it. Why not? I don't think it's dead, but it's not as hot as it was before the fight. This is boxing. You win and you lose sometimes, Jack said. It's funny how the narrative is spun. Deontay Wilder loses a fight that he's widely favored to win against Joseph Parker so that he can run to 78 Sports and lay the blame at the feet on Anthony Joshua, saying, now the fight between us won't happen because they're going to use this as an excuse, me losing to Joseph Parker, when if the fight between you and Joshua ain't happening, that's your fault, not his. You were favored to beat Joseph Parker. He was favored to be beaten by Otto Wallin.
Don't act like you didn't see him. That's what Bob Arum was saying ahead of the fight. That's what Teddy Atlas was saying ahead of the fight.
Many had expected Wallin to present Joshua with a lot of trouble. Wallin had a single defeat on his record to current WBC world champion Tyson Fury, but the contest played out in a one-sided manner, with Wallin having no answers. From the start, Jack was very impressed with the British star's performance. I thought it was one of the best fights in his career. I'm proud of him. It was a good fight. You have to respect what's in front of you and not look ahead. Most people felt AJ had the tougher fight than Wilder, but look what happened.
And like I said, you're gonna see a lingering desire in some circles, very small ones, for the fight between Wilder and Joshua to still go down, because those people feel that's Wilder's last shot at redemption.
That he can lose 2 fights to Tyson Fury. In some people's eyes, all 3 fights to Tyson Fury.
3.
He can lose those fights, and he can even lose to Joseph Parker. But so long as he's better than Joshua, so long as he can beat Joshua, it'll make it all right. They need to know that Wilder was better than Joshua, even though all the evidence is to the contrary. No, you never avenged a single loss to Tyson Fury the way Joshua avenged his loss to Andy Ruiz. You're not a 2-time heavyweight champion.
You never avenged the loss, and you never got your title back the way AJ got his titles back when he avenged his loss to Andy Ruiz. You're not even talking about avenging your loss to Joseph Parker.
Think about that. He's still talking about Anthony Joshua. Hey, sweetheart, you've still got Joseph Parker problems.
But Wilder and Wilder's supporters, they still want to make it about Anthony Joshua because they don't want this era to come and go, things ending like this. Do you know what this means?
When the curtain closes on this era of heavyweights, the number 1 and number 2 guys, that spot might be divided between Usyk and Fury. Anthony would be at number 3, having been a 2-time unified heavyweight champion and having beaten way more top 10s than Wilder ever did. Anthony might be at number 3. 4 and 5, that might be divided between Joseph Parker and Andy Ruiz. Think about it. Joseph Parker has a recorded victory over Andy Ruiz, a victory he got by the skin of his teeth, but still, that's a victory, and a better name than most names you'll find on Wilder's resume. And if nothing else, Joseph actually beat Wilder. They actually fought, and Joseph won. So you can't rank Wilder ahead of him. You can't rank Wilder ahead of Andy.
Andy was a unified champion. Wilder wasn't. Andy's win over Anthony Joshua is bigger and better than any win on Wilder's resume.
Only halfway decent wins on Wilder's resume is the win over Stavern for the WBC title and the win over Luis Ortiz. You can't lord that over Andy because Andy beat Luis Ortiz, and Andy's win over Anthony Joshua is bigger and better than Wilder's win over Stavern. It goes without saying. So you would have to rank Wilder below all those guys.
There's even an argument that you might have to rank him under Dillian White because Dillian White actually beat Joseph Parker. Wilder didn't.
Dillian and Wilder have roughly the same number of losses, but the guys that beat Dillian, it's not like Wilder beat any of those guys. He didn't beat Fury, he didn't beat AJ, and he didn't beat Povetkin. And that's why you're seeing a push in some circles, albeit very small ones, for Wilder to still have the Joshua fight. It's because they don't want this era to close out like this. It's because of what it means that you couldn't beat Joseph Parker.
They're not even asking for a rematch with Joseph. They think that even though he just lost, he should still get to have the Joshua fight.
Don't you want to run it back with Joseph?
No.
Don't you want to make it right? Don't you want to try to avenge the loss?
He doesn't.
And they don't, because they figure if they can finagle a Joshua fight and perform some kind of fucking miracle, actually win, well, that'll make it all right. That'll make it all better.
It's pathetic.
Wilder's disdain for Anthony Joshua, feeling inferior to him underneath it all, that's what this is all about.
He is inferior.
Less than. Not up to scratch, not on par, not his equal. This era closing out like this, that's what it suggests. And that's what they're not comfortable with. But it's over.
The fight is dead.
Spare me the bit about you win some and you lose someone. That's not what you guys would be saying if it were Anthony that had lost. If Anthony failed to make it past Otto Valine, save it!
Spare me.